You might be aware that I've hinted about the new road disc bike that I'm on. And I've finally built it up and I'm riding it now, so we'll go through that at the top. Right, so here we go. This is the bike I've been talking about. It's a Supersix disc high mod, and not the most obvious of choice for me, seeing as I like something with a bit of aero for my next bike, especially with discs. It was at too good a price to miss out on. Basically, I knew a guy selling it, a really good price, and the group set was included. I've always wanted to try a high mod just to see if there's any actually, you know, noticeable difference between that and a normal Cannondale carbon frame. And so yeah, here we go. It was a great price. It came with the group set, came with Ultegra disc group set. So I just needed to add wheels, finishing kit, cranks, power meter, that sort of thing. So actually I built this bike up really cheap. I'm going to do a full review on the bike when I've ridden it more. I've probably done about 1,000 Ks on it now, mainly in winter conditions in the UK. Taken me a while to get used to the geometry, and even though I've set it up with my normal bike fit, it still feels a tiny bit different, mainly due to having different bars on there. They've got a very long reach, quite a deep drop as well, so I'm still getting used to those. This video is just going to take you through the basic build choices and the components I went for. Now normally with bike against the wall convention, you would have drivetrain facing outwards, but being as this is a disc bike and when the sun's on them, absolutely shine like a diamond in a goat's ass, we're doing it this way around. So like I said, it's a 60cm high mod frame. The stiffness, I was surprised at the stiffness. It is noticeably stiffer than a frame that's not made from high mod fibres. I know that sounds really subjective, and we'll try and get more objective later on the full review, but it's very direct. It's not the most comfortable of frames, which I was surprised about actually, but a lot of that comes from the seat post and not having much seat post exposed. There's not a lot of deflection there. And the seat post I've got on it, the Thompson Elite, I wanted a seat post with zero offset basically to get a bit further forward, and the Cannondale Save seat post has a rearward offset. I didn't want that, so I went for the Thompson Elite, and that's actually really stiff. I'll drop in a picture of the inside of it. They've done some funny machining in there and left a lot of material fore and aft, which makes it seriously stiff, and it's not compliant at all. I've got 27.2mm Elite seat post, and that's noticeably more compliant. This is the skinnier one, so they have to add a bit more material. This is 25.4, so I think to equate the safety margin, they've just put a bit more material in there, but it makes it really stiff. This bike is not designed to be used with that seat post. It's designed to be used with the Save seat post, and that's where you're going to get the comfort from. But I quite like it, having it really stiff on the rear end. I mean, I've got a Conti 25 in there, which is quite wide. You can only drop the pressure of that a little bit, and I really like the stiffness in the rear end, vertically actually, because I find a lot of bikes now are getting too compliant. The seat posts are getting a little bit squishy, and if you've got a really stiff seat post, you can spin a really high cadence without bobbing, and you can spin a high cadence with quite low resistance like you would on rollers or something, or on a track bike, without kind of bobbing up and down. So that's why I went for that seat post. It is a little bit stiff. I might try the Cannondale Safe seat post if they ever release one in a zero offset. Now you might not recognise these rotors, because these are not Ultegra rotors. These are actually the brand new Shimano XTR mountain bike rotors. And why did I go for those? Well, there seems to be a worldwide shortage of Dura-Ace or Ultegra rotors when I was building this bike up. And I noticed that you could get the brand new XTR 160mm rotors for a little bit less money actually than a Dura-Ace rotor, and they're actually lighter. So it's pretty much a win-win all round. I mean, they've still got the kind of sandwich Ice Tech aluminium sandwich construction. The fins are slightly smaller, but been riding for a week here in Mallorca and absolutely had no problems with them. No overheating, no squealing. They've been absolutely flawless. And I don't even have the finned pads in the caliper. I think I've got sintered pads in there, which deal with the heat very well anyway. Not the most immediate power when you first pull the lever, but they deal with the heat really well, and the consistency down Sacalobra, which is, you know, a 10k descent with numerous hairpins, and you're going fast and it's quite steep. They did not fade once, and so I was very, very impressed with them. You know, you're not going to want to touch them at the bottom of the descent, but really, really chuffed with the XTR, the brand new XTR rotors, and I haven't seen another road bike with them on. So if you can't find Dura-Ace rotors, get the XTR because they're about 10 grams lighter and they are cheaper. Now on the rear, this bike comes stock with a 140. I've actually gone for the 160 size. I mean, if I'm going discs, why not go for the big boy ones? Let's keep it consistent. 160 front and rear. And I think 160 might be a bit overkill for the rear. But, you know, when you're riding rim brakes, you use the same braking force front and rear. You know, both the calipers are the same front and rear. So, although it might be a bit overkill for the rear, what I'm trying to get at is if you're moving from rim brakes to discs, the consistency between the force in your left and right hands will be the same. But at least if you go both sizes, front and rear, the same, it's going to feel consistent in that transition from rims to discs. So that's why I've done that, and it you know, just makes the bike look a bit more normal if they're the same size. So I've got the standard Quark GXP crank on here. The power meter that I've been using on my other bikes, it's still going strong. And this bike came with a Seabear ceramic bottom bracket. Now, I don't really care for ceramic bearings, they don't really do anything for me. But you know, it came on the bikes, and the GXP power meter went straight on, so no problem there. Obviously this bike has got externally routed front and rear Met cables. I don't really mind about that, to be honest. I mean, they are going to catch a bit of dirt, but performance wise they're absolutely fine. Aero credentials, I mean, not really worth worrying about really, although some people might say they act as a little trip strip for around the down tube, but I'll have to get Hambini's advice on that one. Wheels. Now I am building a set of deep wheels for this back at home, but I needed a set of rims to get me going basically, and so I just bought the cheapest, most reliable ones I could find, and I went with the Prime, I think these are called Prime Race Disc. They're 19mm internal, 24 external. Normal rim made by Alex Rims, you might have heard of that company. They make quite cheap rims for a lot of companies, and I think the hubs are based around Novatec, and the spokes are DT Swiss double butted. Now that's the most important thing for me. I just wanted them to work and not break spokes basically, so DT Swiss spokes, that was a tick. You don't need to worry about the rim surface so much because you're not using a rim brake, and they were just really good deal. You couldn't build them for that price. They were 180 quid on chain reaction cycle, so for something to get me going, and the weight's not too bad. It's 1,600 grams, so 24 spokes front and rear, absolutely perfect. 2-cross front and rear, so perfect tangential lacing on both sides, drive side and disc side. So I'm really impressed by those wheels so far. They did take a bit of a knock in my bike case. The rear one went out of true, but I've trued that up, and since, you know, using them, I've done about 1,000 k's on some really rough roads, and they're absolutely brilliant. So as training wheels go, 5 out of 5 for me on them so far. Apart from one thing on the rear hub, when I first got them, the rear free hub engagement was a bit clunky. Like when you change gear and then stepped on the pedals, you get almost like a little bit of a pinging noise and a clunk, and I think that was the pawls in the free hub just kind of slipping and engaging. That seems to have gone now after about 1,000 k's, and the rear free hub's got noticeably louder, so I might put a bit of grease in that because it now sounds like a mountain bike wheel. Just a word about the Ultegra discs. I mean, they've been absolutely perfect for riding out here in Mallorca. I didn't really use them much in the UK. I was actually waiting to jam on the disc brakes and really test them out, but when you've got some really long descents here, the flexibility you can keep in your upper body by not having to kind of tense your wrists up and apply lots of force with your hands it works wonders on the descents. You can actually enjoy the descents much more because they flow, your upper body's relaxed, you can let the bike kind of move around over the bumps, and so I've been really impressed with them. And you can see, I mean, how much I've used them with the amount of brake dust on those calipers. They've been a joy to ride. I mean, they make the bike a bit heavier, but honestly, it's well worth it. Moving on to the cockpit, I've got a Physic Cyrano, I don't know how you say that, carbon bar. Not my first choice, it's just what I had built the bike up with. They're very stiff, they are carbon, again not my first choice, but they really suit this bike because this is a very stiff bike, but I might change it for something a bit shallower because I've got quite aggressive position on there anyway. Stem's just a 3T stem I had lying around. Don't say much about that really, it's pretty light, does the job, 120mm. What else is there to say? The Ultegra, the mechanical Hydro Ultegra group set, the hoods are still quite big. Let's not be around the bush. The hoods, They are pretty big, and they're comfy, but only in a couple of positions. Now, if you want to lie your forearms along the top of the bars, like you would when you're trying to get really aero, and still hold on to the hoods, because they kick up so much at the front, your wrist ends up in a kind of funky position. Like you have to really bend your wrist up and out the way, and it's just not that comfortable. And I really would prefer the size of the Di2 hydro levers. They are a lot smaller at the hoods. You can adjust the kind of like the free play before the calipers, before the pads come in and bite, and you can adjust the reach on them. So there's 2 bits of adjustment there, and I have wound in the reach, so when my hands are in the drops I can grab that much easier, and I can also kind of like preload the brake, so the brake's not on there, but I've got it well covered, and then the brake will bite there. So I like to descend with it just pulled back slightly, so I've got very quick braking. And that, if you're riding crits or something like that as well, which I won't be doing on this bike because it's now my show pony, then that's really handy if you can cover the brakes like that. And I like to have the pull quite far back. So what else to mention? I've got the Fabric Scoop Flat Elite saddle on there. Pretty cheap, very comfortable. Not the best anatomically, doesn't have a cutout, but because I said the lack of compliance in this bike with this seat post, it's got this kind of suspended canopy, and that flexes a lot in the middle. So, you know, the base on that is really spongy, and it makes the bike really compliant when you're sat on that. Now, one of the things, my biggest bugbears about road bikes is tyre clearance. Now, this is a Conti 25. It's measuring up at around 27, 28 on this wide prime rim, and you can see it doesn't look like, because I can't get the camera in the right angle, it doesn't look like there's a lot of space there, but there is. There's about 4 or 5 mil of space either side of the tyre. It's symmetrical through the chainstays as well, unlike some bikes where you get different amount of tyre clearance on both sides. I don't think I'd like to run a Conti 28 in there, because that'll be about 30, and that might be a bit tight. This bike has got, like, you know, like a fake brake bridge brace still, and there's plenty of room around that. I actually quite like that. It gives a bit of rigidity to the seat stays left and right, and it's probably handy when you're packing the bike as well, like in a bike box. If you've got nothing supporting that whole length, they can quite easily get pinched together and do a bit of damage. We'll flip the bike around in a minute. Through the forks you could fit a 28 Conti, no problem. There's loads of room in there. So let's have a look at the other side quickly. Now, to keep the weight down of this bike, I built it up with Dura-Ace front and rear mechs. Like I said, it's an Ultegra shifters and Ultegra discs, but I've gone for Dura-Ace front and rear mechs. Now, I don't know whether it's just because it's new and the jockey wheels are brand new, but it's completely silent. Like this, it's so smooth, this drivetrain on the chain. It just really works really well. You know, the Shadow style rear mech hanger sits a bit further inboard. I've actually got the chain too long on this. I cut it too long, and I was in a rush when I built it. That's why I've got the B screw already wound in quite a lot to push the mech away to tension the chain up a bit. So yeah, that's why that mech's sitting a bit funny, but it still shifts just fine. It'll crisp enough if I short on the chain and wind the B screw out a bit. Front mech is Dura-Ace as well, and these new, I don't know, how do you describe the pull mechanism on the cable? But instead of like the big kind of lever arm thing we used to have on the last generation of Ultegra and Dura-Ace, this new system works a lot nice. It's so much nicer, and the way they've packaged the cable clamp and the routing of the, basically the lever pull on that is much nicer, and there's a tension adjuster on the front mech itself, unlike the old series. So it's much easier to get enough tension in the front mech. It's much easier to set up, and if you lose a bit of tension in the cable, it's much easier to bring it back with that adjuster there. I've also got a barrel adjuster up front, just in case I need to, but and there we go. So thanks for looking. There's going to be a full review on it, but I just wanted to go through the kind of component choices, like I said, to get us going. Cheers.